A fase 3 do universo cinematográfico da Marvel começa com um grande desafio: colocar seus heróis uns contra os outros na adaptação de um dos arcos mais famosos dos quadrinhos. Era hora da Guerra Civil chegar aos cinemas e mudar completamente os rumos do Marvel Studios. Assim que finalizaram o Capitão América, o Soldado Invernal, os roteiristas Christopher Marcus e Stephen McFeely começaram a pensar na continuação baseada nos ganchos deixados pelo filme. Porém, depois de meses arquitetando como usar as consequências das ações de Bucky Barnes, tudo mudou. Kevin Feige, presidente do Marvel Studios, entrou na sala em que trabalhavam e declarou que o próximo filme seria a Guerra Civil.
Captain America Civil War is a story that we couldn't have done years and years ago because it really focuses on all of the heroes that you've met up to this point in the Marvel Universe. It's a Captain America film, it's the third film in the Captain America trilogy, but it also is a film that has a very important place amongst all of the other films we've made, in particular the other Avengers films. And by this point, people know Steve Rogers very, very well. People know Tony Stark very, very well. And we felt it was time to see them, because we know their personalities so well, we know how they work together, and we know that they have some issues with each other. They're very, very different people. And how would they react if they were faced with an issue that they just disagreed about?
A direção ficou mais uma vez nas mãos dos irmãos Russo, que voltaram para continuar o trabalho iniciado em Soldado Invernal, um filme que impressionou tanto a Marvel que o estúdio confirmou a dupla no novo filme 3 meses antes do lançamento do segundo filme do Capitão América. O principal objetivo deles era fazer algo diferente, não apenas outra aventura do Capitão. Um risco que o Marvel Studios aceitou tomar principalmente depois que a Warner anunciou Batman vs Superman, a origem da justiça. Foi nesse momento que Kevin Feige percebeu que era preciso fazer algo desafiador com os filmes de herói para manter o interesse do público. Esse desafio, é claro, aconteceria nas telas e atrás das câmeras, uma produção que precisou romper inúmeras barreiras para chegar ao cinema.
This one has been in the works for so long, for so many years. So many hard pieces had to fall into place. Getting the right actors, getting the actors to agree to come together, finding a Spider-Man. It really is, feels very good that the movie's finished and ready to go out to the world.
A primeira barreira a ser superada foi garantir Robert Downey Jr. Ao contrário dos outros membros do elenco, Downey não contava com um contrato para vários filmes e as negociações para garantir sua presença foram pesadas. No final das contas, o estúdio desembolsou 40 milhões de dólares, mais uma participação de lucros e um adicional caso o filme tivesse um desempenho melhor na bilheteria que Capitão América, o Soldado Invernal.
This is protection. It's internment.
She's
Tony.
not a U.S. citizen, and they don't grant visas to weapons of mass destruction.
She's a kid.
Give me a break!
It was exciting, you know, I mean, a lot of it rested on Downey's shoulders, whether or not that he would be willing to do this, you know, and you know right away that when you bring Downey into the equation, the movie is going to, you know, it's going to have a certain level of awareness and it's going to have a certain level of charisma. He you know, that's what he comes with, and it was exciting. It was exciting to think that you could kind of, you knew what it meant as a jump off. You knew what that meant because obviously the Civil War in the comic books incorporates so many characters, and at the end of the movie, you know, Marvel has this great history of never leaving you completely satisfied. You kind of anticipate the next chapter, and this would obviously leave the entire MCU in a little bit of disarray, which is exciting because that's only going to be more rich for the next Avengers film. So for me, I was thrilled. I mean, shit, I'll take all the help I can get.
Com a possibilidade de utilizar os dois heróis, a Marvel, acima de tudo, conseguiria mostrar a evolução dos personagens ao longo dos anos. Stark sempre foi visto como um herói arrogante. Desde o seu primeiro filme, quando revela sua identidade secreta, ele se estabeleceu como um personagem que fazia o que bem entendesse e não se importava com a opinião alheia. Porém, agora a Marvel teria a oportunidade de mostrar como suas atitudes passadas pesam em seu ombro, mostrando um outro lado do herói, um lado mais maduro.
Did you know? I didn't know it was him. Shut me. I just did you know. Yes.
Well, it's funny. I was thinking a couple days ago in Iron Man 2, I'm saying that the government can't have the suit and it's my private property and all that stuff. And now I'm saying we got to sign it all over. But I think about it, I was just relating to it as it just being a function of age, like the things you're so determined and passionate about in your 30s and 40s, when you start looking at the back nine, you're like, or maybe I'm entirely wrong, you know, because you don't really have the time and energy to stay as rigid.
We need to be put in check. Whatever form that takes, I'm game. If we can't accept limitations, we're boundaryless, we're no better than the bad guys.
Ao mesmo tempo, os cineastas queriam mostrar que Steve Rogers abandonou a ideia de ser um símbolo americano de patriotismo. Enquanto no passado ele não pensaria duas vezes em trabalhar com o governo, agora ele começou a questionar as atitudes dos políticos e tem dificuldade em confiar em autoridades após os eventos do segundo filme solo, onde descobriu que a Hydra estava infiltrada na SHIELD.
What I think is nice about where they're pushing him is that it's the first time Steve doesn't really know the answer. I mean, the first Captain America, it's pretty clear. Nazis are bad. We can all agree with that. Captain America 2, it's SHIELD is being run by Hydra. No conflict there. The Avengers movies, aliens are no good. We want to fight them. It's always pretty cut and dry for him to know which side of the coin to fall on, and this one is why this is tricky. This conflict is a little more akin to day-to-day struggle that we all go through, where there's no right and there's no wrong. There's a point of view. And I think it's hard for him to understand what the right thing to do is and what his role is.
I don't mean to make things difficult.
I know, because you're a very polite person.
If I see a situation pointed south, I can't ignore it. Sometimes I wish I could.
No, you don't.
No, I don't.
Junto com essa disputa ideológica, haveria também a continuação da relação do Capitão América com Bucky Barnes. Para os irmãos russos, era fundamental entender o papel do personagem de Sebastian Stan na história e sua ligação não apenas com Rogers, mas também com Tony Stark. Os diretores fizeram o passado do Soldado Invernal ser um dos temas principais do filme, fazendo com que sua fama o fizesse ser acusado de um atentado de bomba que resultaria na divisão final entre os Vingadores.
I was really excited when I read the script. I didn't really know where they were going to take it because the playing field was so open they could have done anything with the character. What was fun about the script was that when you were reading him, you never knew where he was going to swing. He might become the Winter Soldier, he might be Bucky Barnes. So there was a lot of playing room there, and that was fun.
Steve. Which Bucky am I talking to?
Your mom's name is Sarah. He used to wear newspapers in his shoes.
Can't read that in a museum. Just like that, we're supposed to be cool?
What did I do?
Enough.
Oh, God, I knew this would happen. Everything Hydra put inside me is still there.
Com essa barreira definida, surgiu um novo problema para Marvel: apresentar novos personagens em seu universo cinematográfico.
All right, everyone have patience. On to roost!
Hey everyone.
A primeira opção do estúdio, respeitando a importância do herói no arco Guerra Civil, era o Homem-Aranha. No final de 2014, começaram a circular os primeiros rumores de que o Marvel Studios estava negociando com a Sony para conectar o amigão da vizinhança em seu universo cinematográfico. Mas a indecisão em torno dos direitos do Aracnídeo não podiam atrasar a produção da Guerra Civil. Assim, os roteiristas deram para o Pantera Negra, que já fazia parte da trama, o espaço que inicialmente seria ocupado por Peter Parker. T'Challa, que nem usaria o uniforme deixando sua apresentação para o seu filme solo, acabou se tornando uma das figuras centrais da trama, no contraponto do Soldado Invernal.
So much of the Civil War story is told from Captain America's point of view. We've brought in Tony Stark to showcase that other side of that argument, and it's really the two of them and the people that team up with them. But at the same time, we thought it would be fun to introduce a third side, to introduce a character that audiences have wanted us to introduce for many, many years, and who comes in and is really not agreeing with either side in particular and can represent sort of fresh eyes. And frankly, to not necessarily care about either side of those arguments because he has his own agenda, and that's T'Challa, the Black Panther.
Ao contrário de Robert Downey Jr., Chris Pratt e outras estrelas do universo Marvel, Chadwick Boseman não precisou fazer uma audição para o filme. Desde o princípio, a produtora o imaginava como herói, e por isso logo entrou em contato com seu agente para ver se havia interesse por parte dele no papel.
I didn't audition. They just called me up and said, "Do you want to do it?"
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's a good place to be. That's awesome.
About a minute-long celebration, yelling, praising God, just screaming like I was watched a buzzer beater at a basketball game.
Enquanto Chadwick Boseman era oficialmente apresentado como Pantera Negra e a Marvel anunciava para o mundo a preparação da Guerra Civil, os rumores sobre a participação do Homem-Aranha continuavam a circular, mas nada era confirmado. Porém, tudo mudou graças a James Franco, Seth Rogen e sua nova comédia, A Entrevista.
Why are you telling us all this information?
Well, we're telling you this because you two lucky gentlemen are going to be in a room alone with him. Congratulations, by the way.
That's right!
Which is part of the reason why we're here. The CIA would love it if you two could take him out. Take him out.
Take him out.
Take him out.
You want us to assassinate the leader of North Korea?
Yes.
A produção irritou um grupo de hackers chamado Guardiões da Paz, que começou a liberar diversos e-mails privados da produtora, e entre eles estava a negociação entre a Sony e a Marvel pelos direitos do Homem-Aranha. Na época da liberação, as negociações estavam paradas, mas a empolgação do público com a possibilidade do Teioso entrar para o universo Marvel foi gigantesca e certamente influenciou na decisão final. Então, no dia 11 de fevereiro de 2015, o Homem-Aranha foi oficialmente anunciado e passou a fazer parte do Marvel Studios, com sua estreia prevista para o Guerra Civil.
Look, it was amazing. It was, it was really important to us. He started working his way into the creative process much earlier than the deal was worked out where we could actually use him. So it was kind of a scary few months for us because he was becoming a part of the story in a way where we weren't going to be able to excise him because he wouldn't have been in our story if he wasn't necessary to it. So we were in this very strange place of needing him but not yet having him. So when we finally got the word that Kevin Feige was able to work out a deal with Sony Studios where they could use the character and bring the character in the MCU, we were ecstatic because the house would have fallen down.
Who else knows? Anybody?
Nobody.
Not even your unusually attractive aunt?
No. If she knew, she would freak out. And when she freaks out, I freak out.
You know what I think is really cool? This webbing. That tensile strength is off the charts. Who manufactured that?
I did.
Climbing walls? How you doing that? Adhesive gloves?
It's a long story. I was...
Lordy, can you even see in these?
Yes, I can't. Look, I can't. I can see in those, okay? It's just that when whatever happened, it's like my senses have been dialed to 11. there's way too much input, so they just kind of help me focus.
You're in dire need of an upgrade. Systemic, top to bottom. 100-point restoration, that's why I'm here. Why are you doing this?
Because I've been me my whole life, and I've had these powers for 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
I read books, I build computers. And yeah, I would love to play football, but I couldn't then, so I shouldn't now.
Sure, because you're different.
Exactly. But I can't tell anybody that, so I'm not. Look, when you can do the things that I can, but you don't, and then the bad things happen, they happen because of you.
So you want to look out for the little guy, you want to do your part, make the world a better place, all that, right?
Yeah, just looking out for the little guy. That's what it is.
I'm gonna sit here so you move the leg. Got a passport?
No, I don't even have a driver's
You ever been
license.
to Germany?
No.
Oh, you'll love it.
I can't go to Germany.
Why?
I got homework.
I'm gonna pretend you didn't say that.
No, I'm being serious. I can't just drop out of school.
Might be a little dangerous. Better tell Aunt Hottie I'm taking her on a field trip.
Don't tell Aunt May.
All right, Spider-Man.
Os irmãos russos comandavam as filmagens em Atlanta ao mesmo tempo que Kevin Feige e a representante da Sony, Amy Pascal, trabalhavam para encontrar um novo Peter Parker. Ele precisava ser mais jovem que seus antecessores, pois a ideia era fazer uma série de filmes que se passariam na escola.
I can only imagine what it is you're going through.
Anytime you're going to cast a role as big as Spider-Man, there's a huge search involved, and Serafin and her team looked at 7,500 tapes.
It was crazy. It was a pretty daunting process. I went through a phase of just doing self-tapes after self-tapes after self-tapes. I guess when you can do what I can do, maybe you have a responsibility to do some good with it.
Then we met about 200 boys, and there were so many of them that were so good. But Tom was different than everyone else.
Okay, then.
There was just something about Tom Holland's performance that was just so energetic and real and grounded and full of attitude.
There was all these screen tests, and I got to meet Tom while he was in the final run in there.
God, I don't want to jump the gun. Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay.
Yeah, I love adventure. Yeah.
Tom, we got even luckier because we found a kid who not only is a great actor, but he also can do a standing backflip just for fun. For a young man walking into a room with Robert Downey and into a room with Chris Evans,
Action.
That's got to be terrifying as an actor. Like you're walking in with probably your childhood idols.
Do I need to do that? I know we're on different teams. I just don't want to be disrespectful to you.
Please surrender.
Wait. Whoa, that thing does not obey the laws of physics.
Seriously, kid, where are you from?
Queens.
Brooklyn.
Thank you.
Ao mesmo tempo que a Marvel garantia a presença de 2 novos personagens, os irmãos russos passavam por uma difícil decisão. Para qual lado cada herói seguiria? Como teoricamente nenhum dos dois estava errado, os cineastas precisaram estudar cada personagem para entender a decisão que tomariam nessa batalha de heróis.
It was difficult, and we spent a lot of time talking about that. We got together in the room with the writers Marcus McFeely and with the producer Nate Moore, and we sat around for a few months and really, discussed on in a very deep way what would motivate each character so far. What have we seen of them so far in the Marvel Cinematic Universe? What would motivate them to make the choice that they make in the movie? We wanted also to surprise the audience too. We didn't want everyone to just line up in a way that you would expect them to. And so we looked for interesting storytelling beats that could potentially make for some surprising moments.
What do we do, Cap? We fight.
This is gonna end well.
They're not stopping.
Neither are we.
We're still friends, right?
Depends on how hard you hit me.
A formação dos dois times resultaria em uma cena histórica para o universo Marvel, a Batalha do Aeroporto. Considerada a versão cinematográfica de uma página dupla dos quadrinhos, a cena do aeroporto exigiu meses de preparação da equipe de efeitos visuais, em um trecho do filme que é 90% computação gráfica.
Okay, Tiny Dude is big now. He's big now.
Essa batalha, acima de tudo, era uma briga entre antigos amigos. Os diretores tomaram cuidado para não colocar nenhum dos heróis como um vilão. Enquanto isso, o verdadeiro vilão estaria nas sombras, servindo apenas como uma faísca que acenderia o barril de pólvora que resultou na Guerra Civil, o Barão Zemo.
What the hell is this?
Why don't we discuss your home? Not Romania. Certainly not Brooklyn, no. I mean, your real home. Желание. Ржавой.
Stop.
12.
Stop.
Разведь. Jedź. Jedź. Dobre kacety. Возвращение на родину. Один. Грузовый вагон. Солдат.
Я готов отвечать.
Mission report. December 16, 1991.
Além de despertar o Soldado Invernal e arquitetar a explosão que mata o pai do Pantera Negra, é Zemo quem revela o envolvimento de Bucky Barnes no assassinato dos pais de Tony Stark, resultando em uma das lutas mais icônicas do cinema entre o Capitão América, o Homem de Ferro e o Soldado Invernal.
I know that road. What is this?
O filme chegou aos cinemas e foi um sucesso, não poderia ter sido melhor recebido. A recepção da crítica foi em sua maioria positiva, com elogios para as aguardadas apresentações do Pantera Negra e do Homem-Aranha, além de falar do desenvolvimento emocional das personagens. O público também respondeu muito bem ao filme, em uma bilheteria que chegou no total mundial de 1 bilhão e 153 milhões de dólares, tornando-se o quarto filme a cruzar a barreira do bilhão após Vingadores 1 e 2 e Homem de Ferro 3. O Marvel Studios provou seu poder de surpreender o público com Guerra Civil e certamente entregou uma história que leva seus heróis para uma nova etapa. Como fizeram em Soldado Invernal, a parceria entre os roteiristas Christopher Marcus e Stephen McFeely, junto com os irmãos Russo, resultou em um filme transformador para o universo cinematográfico da Marvel, além de ter preparado a equipe para aquele que seria o maior desafio de todos: Vingadores, Guerra Infinita.
The end is near. Done. Half of humanity will still exist.
No próximo episódio do especial Marvel 10 anos, vamos falar sobre o Doutor Estranho, o filme que apresentou o Mago Supremo aos cinemas. Você vai entender os desafios enfrentados para levar o universo místico para as telas e descobrir as polêmicas que marcaram a produção, como a escalação de Tilda Swinton como um ancião. Vamos falar também da recepção do filme e sua importância na rota para a Guerra Infinita.